Well, hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to a day game edition of the Missing Wolves post-game podcast live stream thing. I'm your host, Andrew Dukowitz from Zone Coverage, and we got technically two people that kind of employ me, I guess, independently contract me. Tom Schreier from Zone Coverage. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. Did we figure out custody? I guess Mitch and I didn't discuss this before before the show. Is this a 50-50 split? Yeah. You can have him. You can have him. I don't care.
That should be the argument, is who's claiming him.
Yeah. There's arguably I caused
him like up the middle,
sideways. And then Mitch Hansen, founder of Hitting the Hardwood, writes for Windsor, Canis Hoopus, pretty much anywhere that covers WNBA stuff. But how's it going, man?
I'm doing pretty well. Thank you for having me.
How are you enjoying your prolonged WNBA related offseason?
You know, it's I don't know. I don't really know what to think of it. It's just kind of a hurry up and wait thing. And I think we've all been waiting for way too damn long, but I don't know if I have a feeling we're still going to be waiting a little bit longer, but I don't know. It's been a nice break, but I'm ready. I think a lot of people are ready for it to get rolling again.
I'm like in a way ready and also in a way kind of dreading it because they currently have Dorka Juhas and Ola Kosu on roster.
It's going to be wild.
They're going to have to sign like 11 players in 2 weeks, and then they're going to have to do a expansion draft, WNBA draft, and full training camp all in the span of about 50 days. So,
and it's not just the Lynx that have 11 players to sign. It's about every single team, or about 85% of the league is free agent right now. So it's we're going to have carpal tunnel by the end of this stint.
For chaos's sake, I'm kind of hoping it goes into April just so we can see how bad they do want to keep the season starting at the end of April, but might not be realistic. Did have a basketball game to talk about today, though.
I was going to say, I did not expect this to be where we started after the Denver Nuggets game. I mean, it's great. It's good stuff. I just
got to push my agenda anytime I can. Gophers, they won today. We can talk about that. Probably the biggest win of the year, though, for the Wolves. I mean, going into Denver, like, yes, the caveat is Aaron Gordon is out. I understand that. Day games are weird. I also understand that. Jokic is still a little banged up. I think Doris Burke mentioned that about 115 times during the broadcast. There are plenty of caveats, but, like, Tom, is this the biggest win of the season as I go see what my dog is barking at?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it right now. Obviously, as time goes on, we might see, given how close the West is and given kind of the stakes for the Wolves, they've changed expectations for themselves, obviously, with going to the Western Conference Finals and kind of people wondering if they can get over the hump or concerned that they might take a step back, right? But I think for it to be 0-3 against the Nuggets, kind of test casing, I guess, like what this team would look like in a playoff-ish atmosphere. It won't be exactly like that, but, plays, obviously, they, as people remember, had a pretty big playoff series. And just kind of the way they went about it, too. It felt like this is how they're going to have to win big games. It can't just be Ant. And I think the biggest positive was it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So fun fact, we have a smaller dog next to our two bigger dogs, like a 6-month-old Doberman and then 2 older Dobermans. And our middle Doberman thinks it's fun to just trap him in corners.
It's good defense. It's good
defense. Cut him off
and
then just like lay down. So the younger dog just sits there. The younger dog just sits the game. He's like, I don't know what to do.
They were watching the game. They saw that this is trapping Ant at the logo. I think your dogs just are intelligent beings.
They really are. I mean, you mentioned like, the 2 back-to-back Western Conference Finals, and like this is a team that needs to just kind of start winning these games. I thought it was encouraging that like it didn't seem like a normal Wolves game where they just let up halfway through the third. It seemed like they just kind of responded quite a bit. I mean, Mitch, how much of a role did like the bench play in that, though?
I think it played a decent role. I mean, you look at, I was even thinking about this throughout the course of the game. The duo of Bones Highland and Ao that's a lot of fun to watch, and it allows them to kind of go a little bit faster, a little bit obviously smaller. It provides them with a spark that they didn't have with, somebody like Mike Conley. It's nothing against Mike, but he's older. So it's, you can't run as much as maybe the other guys can, but they can push the pace. They can kind of, I don't want to say change the or swing the momentum, but that's kind of what happened. At least in the first half of this game, where it seemed like we were, the way that first quarter started, it looked like it was going to be a kind of a I guess you could say a down game for the Wolves. It didn't start off great. But then, those guys kind of came off the bench and kind of flipped the switch a little bit and kind of sparked everybody else. And it just kind of spiraled down from there. But I mean, you were talking about too, like with the win itself. I mean, you look at it, just kind of thinking about it from, the whole year. I mean, the Wolves have played OKC really well. Now you got Denver. That's two teams that a lot of people are thinking are going to go to the finals. So, I mean, the Wolves are right there. They just got to be, they've got to show that consistency. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest issues. But I mean, they've shown the ability to take down these the title contending teams. And I think the Wolves are potentially in that conversation. But I mean, they're a much, I think more maybe balanced team or maybe deeper team now that they do have that extra threat coming off the bench. And obviously that's going to play a huge role when you get into the postseason in different matchups that you're going to have, because they have the ability to play small. They have the ability to play bigger. And that's extremely valuable.
I mean, I brought up the second quarter because, Jokic rests 6.5 minutes in the second quarter. Wolves only outscore them by 6 over that entire time, but at about that 2-minute mark in the second quarter, Jaden comes back in. And Jaden in 4 minutes posts 125 net rating. They outscore him by 10, kind of forces the Nuggets to put Jokic back in. I mean, I feel like past years, whether it was the Wolves bench or just the Wolves game plan or Ant going off the court at the same time as Jokic, it didn't seem like there was the same punch when Jokic went to the bench. It honestly felt like a lot of times the Nuggets would come back when Jokic was on the bench. I mean, Tom, did you kind of feel that shift this game too, where they were actually able to take advantage of it? And how much of it is on the Wolves side versus the Nuggets just really don't look like a good team without Jokic?
Yeah, I mean, I just was looking. This is simple math, right? Is on their bench, Tim Hardaway gave you 17 points, right? But otherwise, I mean, Adelman used all his guys here. Obviously, some of this is garbage time, but did not get a lot. And this is kind of the story with the Nuggets, right? That ownership group is interesting. They are very disciplined financially, and they basically won a championship. And here's the downside to financial discipline. They said, hey, we're going to get rid of bench guys, right? And I don't think that fully recovered. I think that the Wolves had the same issue where it was a Naz Reid bench, right? And I think, Bones Highland is still all over the place, right? He had those 2 20-point games kind of earlier this month, and then you see a lot of smaller totals. I think for him to kind of step up in that way, especially as kind of the only traditional point guard, I'm still trying to figure out. Io feels like Na to me, right? And I think played a really important role as Na, but as the Na replacement. But not really a traditional point guard. I think there's still some jankiness to the roster, but especially in this game specifically, I just thought you can do this, you can outscore them. So I was looking, Denver's up 31-22 after one. The Wolves flipped that game right in the second quarter, as we're discussing, 36-19, right? And I think some of that is just Ant can only do so much on his own, and you need. I think they went 3 deep in the bench, right? Got productivity from everyone on the bench. I'm looking obviously Nas 11, Io 9, and a lot of really really good defense, and then Bones is 18 points. So I just think that's so encouraging for a team that probably has to the rotational tighten, right? But you have to have 8 viable options, I think. And this just looked like, again, you can't really call it a playoff game, but an ABC game in Denver where you're 0-3 against a rival. I'm glad those guys stepped up, because sometimes you're worried that the bench kind of dries up in a game like that.
It's been that way all season for the Wolves too. I'm still one of the defenders of Mike Conley still has something left, and he's not a 0. He's still a positive player. It's just he can't score anymore, which is pretty important. And I think you see on a night like tonight, if Bones is hot, you go Bones the entire game.
Yeah.
Finishes with 15 minutes. Kyle Anderson is still getting signed here. If it's the opposite where Bones comes in and bricks his first 2 threes and is just kind of out of it, then you have Kyle, you have Mike, you have Jalen that you can kind of turn to. which like does give them like a legit. The odds that none of them are going to be on in a game is like very low. Like when you got 4 options, like one of them should be able to step up. I really do think. I mean, Tim Connolly just kind of made the perfect move at the deadline. I mean, what are your thoughts on? I haven't talked to you a whole lot about the IO move, but like, what have your impressions been? I guess, Mitch.
I mean, I love the move. I would have loved if maybe they went kind of big game hunting. I think everybody loves the big names. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't the right time. And maybe they wouldn't be, they would kind of have to take 2 steps back in order to, long-term go, forward. But I love the move. He seems like a great fit. He's a great, kind of spark plug off the bench, like I was talking about earlier. To your point about Mike Conley, I agree that I do think he still has some value there. And maybe that's postseason. Maybe they just kind of, if you don't need to play him now, you don't play him, and then you just kind of save him for the postseason, because you never know what maybe those young guys are gonna. I don't want to say collapse in the postseason, but maybe they're not gonna, perform like we've seen them in the regular season. That's where you can throw Mike Conley in there, or a lot of those veteran players. So that's where I could kind of see him stepping in. I do think that just his presence on the team. I mean, we saw, during the game, him talking to Dante, him talking to just different guys when they come back to the bench. It's basically like having an extra coach. Him and Joe Ingles, just having those 2 guys there, I think helps a ton, even if they're not actually on the court. But no, I mean, when it comes to the IO move, I loved it. I will admit, when they made that trade, I haven't watched a lot of him. But I mean, obviously with him being in the Big Ten and just the college career he had, I kind of followed a little bit with that. Just following the college game. But I think it's a great fit. And like I said earlier, with him and Bones, I think that's a great pairing to have coming off the bench if they need to, go small like that. But just having the different options, kind of like what Tom was saying, with just the depth, they're slowly, well, I wouldn't say slowly, but now they're a deeper team for sure. And I think that's going to pay dividends later on.
Yeah, it is. Again, they just can play so fast if Bones has it going. It's just such a different look than, Ant and Julius both kind of plod up the court. I mean, Tom, you mentioned, the point guard thing is kind of weird. I mean, Julius Randle is effectively this team's like point guard. And then like Jaden or Dante is when Julius and Ant are out. I mean, again, not overreacting of like, oh, they beat Denver, they can win a championship now. But like, do you think that they could win it without an actual like point guard? I'm trying to think of like teams that could actually win a ring without an actual point guard.
Yeah, so I just looked this up because of curiosity. I kind of knew where the conversation was going. This is I believe this is in this month starting. So Bones had 3 points in the Memphis game, then 20 against Toronto, 20 against New Orleans, 10, 13, 3, 3, 3, 2, 3, right? That's leading into this game. Like, that's the issue, is if he's not going, right? We see the spark plug nature, kind of how valuable that scoring is when he has a game like he did today. He also probably is motivated, right, to play Denver. But but I think that is where the issue lies with not having the point guard. Like, Conley is kind of in the Joe Ingles role. You mentioned, I think they're both 38. Joe Ingles has one role on the court, which is inbound in crucial moments. Like, that's who Finch trusts. Otherwise, I do think, like, you think of his relationship with Jaden McDaniels, and it's not just McDaniels, but like that was highlighted when, like, I think McDaniels is like resting on his shoulder, and you just see how there's that like brotherly love between 2 players. And I think Ingles plays an important role. Obviously, Duke, he pisses you off when Ingles is kicking basketballs off the TVs, or at least maybe that's the PR department. Shout out to Free. But I think like I think
love
like
great content.
I mean, he's a goofball. He's an absolute goofball. But I think that that's great. Conley's like the older brother. I think obviously you prefer him to be in a role where he is scoring and productive as he was in kind of these playoff runs where the Wolves had their success. I think you just know what's going to happen to a 38-year-old person. It is not typically a gradual decline. It is literally like these guys just kind of hit a wall, unfortunately, at some point, at least from a scoring standpoint. He did, so you can't control the game like he normally would. I still think he plays an important role as kind of this pseudo player coach. It's almost like someone who's staffed, just like Ingles, on Finch's coaching roster. So I still see value. It's just a different role now. And I think the I think of not as the point guard, right? Like he basically just dribbled up and made an entry pass. Like he is not organizing the offense. He's not like assuring, hey, McDaniels doesn't touch the ball in a few possessions. I need to figure out a way to get it. Or same thing with DiVincenzo or some of these guys who are more dependent on kind of a pass coming their way, obviously, to score. So that's where I see Ayo kind of like he's a different kind of defender. I see him as like a high energy defender where would just clamp down on someone. I thought of that with like Murray. He was literally step for step just locking him down. Either way, it was super effective in this game. But I don't think he's going to be a traditional point guard. And that's what I worry about is like Finch can control only so much from the sideline. He obviously will probably have to assert himself in certain points of the game to prevent runs, to adjust coverages, all that stuff. But ultimately, that is what they're missing. It didn't show up in this game. I just worry if Bones Highland is not going off like he's capable of doing. But also, you've seen him kind of have quieter games. If Bones Highland is not productive, what do you lose if you don't have a traditional point guard on the floor, even with this talented team?
That's like the thing I battle with so much is like you look at this team's like advanced metrics, like turnover percentage, pretty much the same as it was last year. Assist to turnovers, same as it was last year. Assist percentage is pretty much the same as it is last year. Like by not having Mike Conley playing minutes, it's not like they've like suffered from like a basketball standpoint, but you can just see the difference, right? When there's like a Bones in there, or when Mike had it going, or again, even like when Dante's having like a really good distributing game, you just like it just looks and feels better. I don't know how to quantify it other than just like it's a point guard thing. Like I think there's just like an emotional intelligence that those people kind of learn from having to control people for their entire lives. But I feel like it's weird because I don't think they need like LaMelo Ball to win it. They just need like, I don't know, just generic competent point guard for a few minutes a game at least to settle it down. I mean, Mitch, where do you stand on it? Because I do feel like this is one way, like one area where the WNBA and the NBA has like very sharply like divided. Like there still are like floor general point guards in the WNBA. The NBA, it's literally just Mike. Chris Paul retired, so it is now just Mike.
I mean, when you were talking about just kind of the difference that it almost feels like it just has more life. Like and that's going to sound like a knock on Mike because that's maybe an old joke, but it seems like they have more energy and more life to them. It is interesting though that to your point that you see a lot of off-ball guards, the quote-unquote off-ball guards that we've, seen in years past that wouldn't be, ball handlers that are primarily ball handlers. And I don't know what the certain time that it switched to this, but it almost seems like the LeBron James kind of era when he started kind of serving more as point guard, it kind of seemed like it almost switched or started like transitioning at that point where we kind of just saw, Ant could play 1 through 3, and that wasn't the case, 15, 20 years ago, whatever. And it is odd that it has kind of switched that way, but it's an interesting, like kind of new wave of basketball that you don't need a traditional point guard. You don't need a Mike Conley. You don't need a Chris Paul. You can be totally fine with having Ant run at the point guard. And that wouldn't have been the case back then, but it is interesting, the shift of things and just kind of how the kind of, I don't know, the layout of positions and how, there is no, point guard, shooting guard, small forward, whatever, like there used to be. Now it's just basically you're a guard and you can play kind of wherever you want. And it's a lot of fun to watch. I mean, if you have guys playing different positions and you see these star players that are controlling the ball a little bit more than maybe they used to, they're not playing so much off ball. It does also lead to a lot of ISOs, which I'm personally not a huge fan of. I like seeing the traditional San Antonio Spurs pass the ball around, 15, 20 times before they make a shot. So it sometimes can slow the game down in that regard, and just kind of make it a little slower to watch as a fan when you do have a lot of ISOs that way. I know Ant's kind of a victim to doing that a lot too. But it's interesting. It's a very different for how. I mean, it's obviously the same exact game. It's at the same level. It's crazy how different the WNBA can be from the NBA in that regard. And who knows, maybe the WNBA will end up following that and kind of switch or slowly transition to that way too. But it's kind of crazy to see the two differences between the leagues.
It's like jarring when they're both playing at the same time. You have to like adjust your like brain because like one, nothing's a foul in the WNBA, so like people are just getting trucked at the baseline and there's no whistle. And you just have to, like, you just have to be like, well, all right, guess that's okay.
I think just to build off Mitch's point real quick, I just looked this up. So 3-point percentage for the Timberwolves, 39%, right? And 27% for Denver. That's good defense. So that's probably limiting some of the Denver's weapons. But this is the issue when you don't, that some of these possessions are just like dribble up, pass, shoot, right? And and that looks effective, especially there. I mean, it matters at home because you get the crowd involved. But I think of Denver. Denver has such a weird dynamic we saw in the playoffs where it's a rabid crowd, but there are a lot of like Minnesota people who live there. So you can kind of like scratch off the Denver, fans, and you reveal the handful, obviously the smaller amount, but like the Wolves. So like in a game like this, you see momentum swings right off of 3 points. But if you don't have that shooting, it does highlight. This is not. We've talked about this. This is not what Finch really wants these guys to do. It was supposed to be Steve Kerr read and react.
Finch is currently losing years off his life.
I mean, I will say this. I know this is going back to a previous game, but a very big moment. Like I think of that moment. So you have this is going back to the Clippers game where Chris Dunn, our old friend, was draped over Ant, right? And you have like two defenders on him, and Finch is like, move the ball, damn it, and he's right. And like Ant's capable of doing this. We saw the shot today, right? I'm trying to think of who was on him. Denver, where he just shoots a very contested three, hits it like it's a wide open shot. But the issue there is, and it's not just it's that when you don't really have ball movers. I mean, I think Randall ended up with 7 assists, right? And you saw some ball movement from some of these other guys in their assist totals, but when you don't have that, you become so 3-point reliant, in terms of scoring. And so I think the thing that's sustainable for this is if you have 8 guys, right, who give you quality minutes, that is a playoff rotation and that will work. Someone pointed out like Slow-Mo could be the point guard, right? He can't be the starter.
Shout out King of being in the chat.
Shout out. We all love Slow-Mo. The other thing is I don't think you can play him to Gobert because you basically don't have 2 scorers, right? I mean, unless you're really just clamping down defensively and you're guarding a big lead, which to be fair, the Wolves have had trouble guarding, holding on to big leads. So, but it's not an entirely viable lineup. I think what he does, Anderson does, and kind of some of these acquisitions is you do have some flexibility because we just don't know what the matchups will be in the West. Like I'm looking there, the Wolves with this win are the number 4 team, and people don't take the Rockets super seriously, right? So the Wolves could move into kind of that 3 range, right? With the Spurs, the Thunder, like the Spurs being a darling, the Thunder, being the team to beat in the West. But you don't know given how there's that cluster, right? You don't really know who you'll match up against. So I do like that. I like bringing in Kyle Anderson in terms of he gives you that defensive presence and some ball handling and stuff. But in a game where you don't have Highland, don't have Anderson, you probably can't play him for long stretches in the game. That's my question is you could, as Mitch was saying, you can physically have Ant bring the ball up, DiVincenzo bring the ball up. Io could do that. And then you can have Randall kind of be the, some sort of offensive hub or some sort of point guard in the half court. It's just you are piecemealing like a very important role that Mike Conley had to this team for a long, long time. And that's what we didn't see in this game, right? We don't know what this covered by having the game Highland did and having the bench play that well is that it covered kind of this potential unknown that in a 7-game series could be, sussed out, right? Denver would go back to, the locker room and in the days off in a playoff series and go, hey, how do we screw with their point guard situation? I think that's kind of what they would highlight. And I think what I want to know down the stretch here is how sustainable is this in general, because we know this, like you could say, hey, you're not going to have Denver on ABC in all these games. It doesn't matter. Some of the most important games are the Tuesday games against random teams at 7:00, right? And like, can they replicate this formula? Because believe it or not, you would beat New Orleans at 7:00 on a Tuesday if you get this game, right? If you replicate this model. So that to me, I want to see the sustainability of like, can you really go 8-9 deep and not wear Ant out, not rely on him as much and kind of cover for the point guard situation that way.
The like playoff part of it, I especially agree with you because this team doesn't have a lot of options offensively. Like they just Like they just don't. Like they in certain matchups can try to work Rudy a little bit more, but it's like it's kind of proven at this point that the rest of the guys on the team, once Rudy kicks a ball into the fourth row, are just like, okay, we're not passing it to Rudy anymore. Like Jaden, I think there's some like, you know, he was guarded by Jamal Murray for half of the game. Like Jaden should have had 30 points tonight. Like Jamal can't guard him. But like the team's like really hesitant to like lean into like Jaden. And I don't know if that's like an Aunt Julius usage thing where they're just like, we got to get ours, or if it's like Jaden doesn't like assert himself as much. And then on the bench, it's like, you know, Nas hit some threes, has some good like drives to the basket, but like they don't really have a pivot that they can go like, okay, we're gonna go from running like a high ISO with Julius on the nail for 60% of our offense to now we're going to run a lot of Jaden Rudy pick and rolls or something like that. Like it's just the offense is what it is. I think with Kyle, the biggest thing for the playoffs is going to be defensively. Like I think that's why Finch keeps saying like defense has to be our identity. That's why all the players talk about it after they lose games, especially that they got to get back to their defensive identity, because like that's where they can mess with people. Like that's where they could put Kyle out at 5 and play Jaden at 4 and go Io, Dante, Ant, and just have like this 1 through 5 switching machine. They could go super big with Rudy, Julius, Nas, Kyle, and Ant, and just have this like overpowering defensive team. Like it just feels like they need to figure out, one, the point guard I do agree with, but two, like the defensive side of it, they just have to get a little more consistently locked in so they can actually try and experiment with stuff. Because like right now, to your Tuesday against New Orleans point, like they can't even try things to like put in their back pocket because they're constantly trying to crawl back into these games that they should be up 30.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just weird. Mitch, what's your kind of take though?
Well, I was just going to ask a question. What do you guys think, you know, looking big picture of this team? I don't want to, you know, look beyond this year, but I'm going to. And
that is your right.
Do you think, you know, looking forward or, you know, ahead at this team, do you think it's more important that they go after a point guard this offseason, figure out that, or is it time to go big game hunting? And let's say I'm just going to throw it like Giannis or somebody to that caliber in revisiting the, you know, the talks that took place during this season or around the trade deadline. Do you think getting like, you know, if they went out and got a point guard, a solid point guard that kind of solidified that position, it would change this team, obviously, you know, talent wise, but would that be the difference, or is it time to just kind of completely shift and like refigure out this roster?
Tom, I'm going to let you answer this, but first ads. Well, hello. Thank you, live stream Andrew. This is Ad Read Andrew. And today we have Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, the presenting sponsor for the Missing Links podcast. Firehawk Construction and Remodeling strives to inspire people to follow their ideas, working with respect and understanding to create a quality, tailored result. Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, located in Blaine and serving in the North Metro area, is here to help you with your building and remodeling needs. I can say personally, thanks to Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, I have a beautiful deck in my backyard and countless projects that I started, they finished. Get started on your new deck or remodel today by calling Isaac at 763-710-5686. And we're back with another ad read, this time for Pence Homes, the presenting sponsor of Hitting the Hardwood Network. From the best tools and technology to transparency throughout the entire process, Nate Pence and the Pence Homes team is the top choice for buyers, sellers, and is proud to support you and your home ownership goals. Get started today by calling 612-308-1122 or by emailing info@pencehomes.com. pencehomes.com. Shout out for the ad cutting out. I mean, Tom, let's just talk a little offseason. Then I do want to talk Shaq at some point. I also have been neglecting the comments, so I'll shout out King of B.
Hey, I looked out for your commenters. I brought up the slow-mo point guard.
All of the people that have been in the comments, I do appreciate all of you guys for being in here. But Tom, what's kind of your thought on the offseason, I guess?
I think I was just looking. So again, the standard for this team is different, right? Like their first round matchup, Denver probably is the hardest one, right? I guess it depends if like the Rockets really like drop or whatever, but otherwise you're looking at like Lakers, Suns, maybe Warriors, right? I mean, like these are teams that they should beat, and we've seen the playoffs, like even that Sun series where the Wolves, it looked like they would. This is a couple years ago, right? They had just lost to the Suns, and it looked like they would lose to them. Once you actually put them in a playoff series, drew it out through 7 games, you realize like, you know, the Wolves are deeper. They won the series they should have. But if they go out in the second or third round, I think there's going to be, and I'm talking even in the Western, there's going to be calls for like, you're going to this a little bit. As Mitch said, do you look at the point guard? There's not really, you know, Dillingham obviously was part of that trade and probably is just a guy who needs to go to a team like Chicago where he can just like have playing time and kind of figure out the NBA. And I don't know how viable it is to go and bring in someone who is like a Mike Conley, right? Even then we looked at it and we said like, well, the risk here you took is that you traded D'Angelo Russell, who's in his prime, for Mike Conley, who's exiting his, right? And actually probably was past it at that point. And the Wolves were just fortunate in some regard that Conley could kind of string this out until he hit age 38, right? So, so I think they will probably need something. I always joke about, Andrew knows this, the like, where's prime, you know, Monte Morris? Where is like Tyus, you know what I mean? Tyus Jones maybe is an option, but like, you know, who are not like, who are not like star, but like could give you viable minutes, can move the ball, are a traditional point guard. You're not kind of piecemealing that together. You know, that feels maybe attainable. It depends on kind of what you do at the roster. The bigger question for me is, can you liquidate if this is the direction they go, and they really feel like they have to reinvent the roster? Can you liquidate Randall and Gobert, the two guys in their 30s who we'd assume are exiting their prime? Can you talk? It would be 2 separate teams, and to kind of, hey, give us enough picks that we can cluster this together, then trade for Giannis. The reason why, kind of as Mitch calls it, big game hunting, the reason why you do this is to give like a really viable second scoring option that even if he's using possessions like Randall does. The big issue with Randall is Randall was playing at an all-star level. Now, we've seen Jonah was tweeting out a whole bunch of stats. And I was like, Jonah, you're going to have for the Randall family come like haul you off, but like, you know, he's slowed down obviously, but when Randall's on, and Randall was close to an all-star in this and has just had a weird season, just missed all-star, was part of trade rumors. Like, I think some of the stuff may factor in, but you know, you want someone, if you're going to take that kind of usage, it's someone like Giannis who takes, you know, makes Ant's life easier, right? Doesn't kind of just take possessions from him. I don't know if you can get enough. You'd really have to be talking a team, and I always think of Charlotte, but like a team that really needs to set a floor, needs to assure they will be in the playoffs. That's kind of the team that would target Gobert. And with Randall, it's really you're desperate for scoring. You want kind of bully ball. You saw what he did in the playoffs when he was at his best. And you really want to tap into that. You think that's kind of the missing piece for your roster, and you're willing to give up a ton to do this. This is actually kind of what, you know, you think of like the Jazz did with the Wolves. They said, well, you really need Gobert to build out the team you want, kind of this wingspan team to get in the playoffs. Kind of that was a big need at the time. They got it. What the best GMs do, they find exactly the right target to send these players to. So I don't know how viable that is. I think it's going to be called for because, again, there's a chance that it's the playoffs. The NBA is more competitive than it's ever been. But I really think the Wolves will get, if aside from Denver's going to be tough, but like I think they will get a matchup they can win in the first round. I think a lot of questions after that. And I just think even if you get to the Western Conference Finals this year, there's just going to be this need to go all in because of where Ant's at in his career. Just you think of him, the star power, and then just with the expectations you have now, it's no longer get into the playoffs. It's no longer have a playoff run. It is really contend right now. And to do that, you probably have to pull off a masterful trade.
Right.
I'm right there with you. Like, I think short of winning a championship, I think it's the summer for them to make a move. Like they have the 2033 first that gets unlocked, 2032 swap they can do. They can trade their own first rounder this year. And then if they do, like if Gobert, like you said, to Charlotte, like if they can get one first rounder from Charlotte for Gobert way out in the future, like talk Dallas into getting Julius and pairing him with Kyrie and Cooper, and maybe you get a first and some stuff from Dallas, and then you go to Milwaukee and it's like, here, we can give you Nas, we can give you 5 first round picks and whatever miscellaneous goop they get from Charlotte and Dallas to make the trade work. I don't know. I think they need to keep Jaden this offseason, and they need to keep Ant. Like, I think those are their two guys that are like, we need this.
And they're gonna extend Io, right? I mean, there's no way they traded all that.
They don't make that trade if they don't think. And honestly, I would add Dante to that list too. Like, I think Dante is one of those players that can fit anywhere, which is why he's always in trade rumors for every team in the league. But also, like, he fits. He plays hard defense, and he as a lights out 3-point shooter, off the catch or off the dribble. Like, that guy just.
Can I throw a name at you? I'm curious, especially with Mitch's. Berenger, do you touch him? Like, to me, I wouldn't touch him. I think that guy is like crazy, even beyond what we saw with Shannon. Shannon's like a productive player, plug and play. This is the opposite, right? It's like, what happens if he learns not to like jump at every mistake, learns English, and like it gets more playing time, gets more exposure in the NBA. To me, Berenger, the thing is, the problem is this core is really tight, right? And so that's why we keep going. There's kind of untouchables, and then there's like, probably don't trade that guy. Like, to me, Berenger is straddling the middle of that. I really would not trade him right now.
I think very highly of him, but also he was like a mid-round, first-round pick. If a team's like, if you're sitting there and you're trying to get like Sabonis, and you have the option of keeping Naz Reid or Berenger, like you're probably keeping Naz and throwing in Berenger. I would guess if it's like a Giannis level deal, like Berenger's, it's probably everybody not named Ant Jaden that's involved in that trade. And then you just have like 13 new players on the roster next year, and half of them are 35 plus because they're like ring chasing guys. I don't know. The people I look at of like who they could go after is kind of like twofold though. And I wonder your thoughts on it, because I think they could go the point guard route where you go and you're probably not making as big of a swing, but you're getting like DeJounte Murray for like low value, and you're just hoping that he stays healthy, or you're getting kind of like a good but not great type of point guard that just fits next to Ant better. You can move Dante back to the bench. Then you have Io Dante coming off the bench. Or I think they're just going to embrace the James Harden level of team building, where it's just like, F it. Let's just get all 3-and-D guys around Ant. Let's do whatever we can. Then maybe it's like a Mikal Bridges if New York wants to shake things up. Sabonis isn't really a 3-and-D player, but like rebounding wise, I think he would be really good next to Ant. I don't know. It's the first offseason in a while. They really don't have anything limiting them though. I mean, to either of you, whoever wants to go first, like what route do you think they'll go for? Like point guard, or do you think they're just going to embrace the like chaos of Ant?
I personally think they're going to try and revisit the Giannis talks. They're going to try and go as big as they possibly can. And then they might have to come back down to earth and add a point guard, kind of like what happened around the trade deadline. I do think, knowing this ownership group and just how much they want to win right now is, to me, I think that's going to put a little bit more pressure on them to make moves. Now it all depends on what happens in the postseason. If they go on a deep run, maybe you do try one more year. But I think we're at that point where you keep running it back. If you maybe don't make it to the Western Conference Finals, or you do lose in the Western Conference Finals, it's okay. This has happened 3 years in a row. Like, maybe we got to figure out and switch things up. But I do think that they're going to do all they can to try and get. I mean, anybody would, but they're going to try to do all they can to get a big name, or somebody a star to go next to Ant. And if you have that, you can always fill in around them. There's going to be guys that are going to want to come here. And they're going to come for cheap too if they see the star power that is here. But I don't know if that's realistic. And I also think that if they do get a solid point guard, I mean that makes a world of difference too. I mean you're improving that area to a team that's already a Western Conference Finals caliber team. So I mean you're not in a. I think either way is a good option, but if it were me making the decision, I'm always in favor of going after the stars, but I'm not in that position, and that's why I'm sitting here. But that's where I think.
I mean, to be fair, Tim Conley has shown us he is the same, right? Like that As much as the Gobert, I think the Gobert trade will just forever be controversial. I don't think we're gonna have resolution. I mean, aside from a championship with him on the roster, just because there's still payout, right? There's still literally like, picks that are given up or whatever to Utah. And the other thing is, assuming Utah puts it together, that's going to become more relevant, right? Over time, what they do with those picks, how they kind of construct that roster. So I think Giannis is on the table because I think they seriously pursued him at the deadline. I think also just they're at a point where you're kind of going to turn things over. I mean, I do like a lot of the roster. We mentioned like DiVincenzo is funny in that you don't need to hang on to him specifically replacement for him, right? That's the biggest argument not to move off him. You literally move him and you go, well, who do we got? No, it was a little different because like they literally like they just could not pay what Atlanta did, and Atlanta gave him a different role. Like that made a lot of sense for both sides, as much as people got really attached to Alexander Walker for obvious reasons. The other thing is it matters a little less now that you have Io, right? So we've kind of learned like you could, I'm not suggesting you have, if DiVincenzo has to be part of one of these trades, these blockbuster moves, you could probably figure out how to cover for him. I don't think they need a star point guard. I think they need someone who could just like functionally run the offense, give you a little defense, like essentially kind of give you professional minutes. That is what Conley did a little more than that, the intangibles and stuff, but that's what older Mike Conley became kind of. I think you're right about McDaniels. The reason why I say Berenger is that at some point you're gonna have to transition. It's like the third wave, right? The wave we're in right now is kind of the Gobert team, right? The second wave would be like the all-in push to kind of sell Edwards on like, hey, even though he's 24, even though he probably will evolve as a player, which is crazy, but you're at a stage where you can go win with him. And I think that is what, if you're Edwards, if you're his camp, that sends a massive message to him. Like, we're serious about this. This is what any team would do with you. There's no difference between how Minnesota operates functionally in this standpoint or like what a Boston, LA, New York would do, right? All these teams, like the big market teams would go all in on that. And so it's worth the risk. And I think, I just know in Tim Conley and kind of what we've seen from him, like the regardless of how you feel about the Gobert trade, like it showed us he is going to go swing for the fences, even on a smaller scale with Rob Dillingham. That's what he did. He gave up some draft capital at a time when that is at a premium, literally because of the Gobert trade, because he just wanted to see, hey, this guy's tiny, but could we tap into, this kind of the superpower he has, which is this, the handle and supposedly the scoring and kind of the excitement we saw when he was on in those moments. So I do think Giannis is on the table. I really think it's just because it's a multi-step process. You really have to nail the Randall. Like that's what makes it difficult is you have to, it's like a parlay. It's not just one big blockbuster. I think it's really this parlay and then making sure that whoever you include as the NBA player, if you have to, that's the right guy, that we don't go back and go, man, they gave up DiVincenzo when he was the missing piece, right? That you didn't have in the playoffs or something like that. So it's why it's exciting. It's why the offseason is always crazy. I joke with Andrew all the time that I'm like the last 30 games, the playoffs and the offseason are more exciting than like anything that happens anytime outside of basketball, right? The game 37 or whatever. So it's going to be that way for the Wolves. And I think Conley's going to do something big in the offseason.
Yeah.
I really think so too. Like it just, everything kind of lines up. The contracts line up. To your point, like I do think Giannis is on the table. Like I was probably the wet blanket out of the Wolves media at the trade deadline where I was just like, it's not happening. Like they're not trading Giannis at the deadline. This is insane, especially knowing that they could get more in the offseason. But like, I mean, if they're not opposed to just like sending dudes out for picks, like TJ Shannon probably could get you a couple seconds at this point. Like Johan could get you a first, get a couple firsts for Randall, get a first for Gobert. If you're okay sending Dante out, you probably get a first for him. I mean, you could get to a world where you're offering Milwaukee like 6 or 7 first-round picks, and then like Randall and then like Nas and all of the returning pieces to make the money work. Because I don't really think they're going to care about who they get back. I think they just are going to want picks because like they're going to need to just restock the cupboards like Utah did after they traded Mitchell and Gobert. But I've teased it twice. Like, Tom, you've been covering the Wolves for like a decade. What is it with Shaq? Huh? Mitch, you've been covering the Wolves for like a decade.
No. Mitch was just, he was an OG. Coverage guy. No, I think the Shaq thing. I mean, here's the thing. TNT is really great television. I've had people tell me, like, as a television show, it's one of their favorite things to watch on the cable package, right? Or however you consume it now. But it is evident those guys now, I think they're watching the Wolves more, right? But it's evident they're not watching every game, that this is it's not Zach Lowe. It's not, I'm trying to think of like some of these podcasts where you put like Haberstroh right. And you have like these geniuses who are crunching. Listen, they're not Ryan Russillo. Like, these guys go outside, right? These guys like go and socialize. So, if you want, Ryan Russillo will give you a breakdown of like, I think like the Magic are an upcoming opponent at some point. If you want to know what's going on with the Magic and Paulo and stuff, he'll break that down. These guys probably will just mess with them because it's like this random team in Central Florida, right? With kind of a weird all-star. So like, or star player, I should say. And so it may be just the makeup of who these guys are. I mean, I know he said it to Barkley, but I love that Ant was just like, bring your ass, like just with very Anthony Edwards, kind of represented us in a very funny, janky, like appropriate way. But I think this is more Shaq versus Gobert, right? I take it more as that than like Shaq versus the Wolves.
It's just so weird, even the Shaq Gobert stuff. Like,
there's something.
What more could Gobert do?
Wow, like, that's true.
He's a 4-time defensive. If he wins Defensive Player of the Year this year, if Wemby gets disqualified from games, and like Chet Holmgren just starts losing some favor, and Gobert wins his 5th, he is like statistically and awards wise the best defensive basketball player in the history of the NBA. And like Shaq still just hates him for some reason. Like, I don't know. It's so weird to me.
I do think that, and I don't know this for fact, but I do think that there's some sort of, I don't know if it's jealousy. I don't know if it's something where they play the same position. So I think that there's a little bit of butting heads in that regard. Could be something completely different, but you see a lot of times where the retired and the older, let's say you got a point guard and they're ripping on the modern day point guard and just, maybe a specific player. I think it's just they feel like they can relate to that position a little bit more. I don't know. I could be completely off, but I want to know what barbecue French toast tastes like, though. I'll tell you that much.
I do not. That sounds
horrible.
It does sound horrible. I love barbecue sauce, and I wouldn't try that.
I mean, I think the only way you justify kind of the Gobert criticisms, because Andrew, right? He's so unique. Like, we'll look back and be like, in a league, especially, I think it's just the NBA became more competitive.
Like Tom, if he wins a 2nd Defensive Player of the Year, like his jersey gets retired here.
So you think so? You think if he?
I think
this is regardless of what happens after
traded this offseason. If he wins another defensive player, he'd be a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year for the Wolves.
I mean, I think just like on court, right? It's weird. I'm just thinking through that ceremony, though. There are people who are going to hate that, right? And some of this is off the court, like. Yeah, I mean, I'm saying Wolves fans. Like, some of this is off the court, like the COVID stuff. Some of this is just like general weirdness of Rudy. And I say this as someone, Rudy Gobert is great in terms of like a voice of the team, as someone who, like, I think they needed that floor raiser. It's at the moment you got him, I understood like the cost, right? But I think that's the kind of player they needed. And I think the biggest knock on him, and it's actually kind of related to like the mindset around Randall is, you have to become a Rudy Gobert team. Like, you have to literally, some of these guys, Io just showed up and he knew how to pass to Rudy Gobert. And I was like, where do you learn that? Like, you were on the Chicago Bulls, a transition team.
I audibly gasped the first time.
I know. I was like, how did you figure that out? Like listen, D'Angelo Russell couldn't figure out for the life of it. Like, he hated it so much. Like, I mean, I was probably just like a high IQ player, probably studied tape. It probably is that simple, but like, he just knew right away. That's how you throw Rudy Gobert. But I think the problem is you have to be a Rudy team. And like, how much is that worth it when you get beyond just the value of kind of the floor raising? Like, at this point, the Wolves, I mean, listen, they could use the floor raising. I'm using like the proverbial New Orleans game on Tuesday. Like, you probably could use it in those circumstances, but in terms of the playoffs, like, this team gets up for series. Like, this team has performed well. Think of where they were as a 6th seed, having lost, how weird that season was, and how many people doubted they beat the Lakers. And I know that's not pure basketball analysis, but like, think of how much they've raised. That is what Anthony Edwards always does. He sees the occasion. he goes, okay, I'm going to go beat the Lakers and walk around LA and talk trash to everyone. Like that is Anthony Edwards.
Yep.
But same thing with him talking trash to KD and all this stuff. We've seen like literally they just hit a snag. Dallas is a weird one. Dallas, I think they should have won that series, but like Dallas, they hit the snag of like just like how that series started, and then obviously you just run into this super team with Oklahoma City. But outside of that, like they've performed, and it's just how much is it worth it to be the Gobert team? I think in a vacuum, Rudy Gobert will not be appreciated because it's the opposite of what a lot of older basketball players have benefited from. Is like someone highlights, right, and go like, everyone jokes about this. This guy was a problem, right? Gobert's not going to have that because I don't think people are going to sit and watch block, right? But I think people will look at his stat page and go, dude, how have I not heard more about him? And it's because he's not. I always use these guys that I loved as a kid, but he's not Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, like these guys who were like anyone who watched basketball at any point in their life could go, man, that guy's so much better than the other players, right? Gobert would be appreciated separately in terms of like people who love basketball go, man, there's just no one like him and there never will be. I think the frustration people have, and this is where the divide is, it's like, yeah, but you had to build an entire team around Gobert because you literally had to teach every player how to play with him.
Yeah.
Mitch, anything to add?
No,
Shaq
I
or
don't.
Gobert?
I already blew my French toast barbecue chicken or barbecue chicken French toast. Barbecue French toast. That's what it's not barbecue chicken. Barbecue chicken French toast might be all right. But
I was going to say, isn't chicken and waffles a thing? Like maybe this is Shaq. Maybe Shaq can create something. I've never thought about chicken and French toast, but I guess if you have chicken and waffles, right, you could.
Yeah. We could keep the barbecue out of it though. That might be.
Yeah, you don't need barbecue in that situation. That's disgusting, dude. That's disgusting.
Sweet baby Ray just all over some French toast.
Maybe really sugary barbecue. Maybe what I mean. Maybe you can
caramelized barbecue sauce
into this.
I mean, this is how you become obese, dude. This is how you literally like. I'm serious. You can't eat that in the morning. That's not how you start your day.
Well, knowing Shaq and how many calories that man has to probably consume, he's probably chugging barbecue sauce and eating French toast as much as he can because he probably consumes 7,000 calories a day.
I don't know how that studio, it's entertaining, but those guys don't just sit on those seats, right? I don't know how those studios haven't just like broken down. Like those are such giant human beings to start. And then they are just wound up, man. Like they are running around the studio. I mean, sometimes even just go to the screen to show, like the play or whatever, but it is, I think you have to see it this way. I understand how like diehard basketball people would get frustrated with TNT. It is literally just there to entertain. The problem is part of that entertainment is picking on players, right? Even like down in Mitch, right? It was Mitchell who was like, I wasn't familiar with the game. And you're like, what? Huh? Like some of this is not great entertainment, but it just sucks that it's at the expense of Rudy Gobert because it becomes hostile, right? Because it's like, I get he's there. I think they're playing a little bit to the anti-Rudy crowd. The problem is I just don't think that's what like, it is a weird thing. It is one thing for Zach Lowe to criticize Gobert because he is making a statistical case or like a X's and O's case. And like, hey, you know, this is not right now, or this is not what you need. It's different when you're doing it just to kind of pander to a crowd. So I say this as someone who's qualms about the Rudy Gobert trade, who sees a lot of positive and negative, who is really just conflicted ultimately about Rudy Gobert. I don't want to see that be part of the entertainment. It just will be. And listen, I think this team has, even like you think of like the Draymond conflict or whatever, handled this well. So if this becomes a thing in the playoffs, I think we could see this become part of the narrative, especially if the Bulls go on a little run here.
Especially like Finch talks about them as being like a moody team. Like they really do kind of take this stuff personally too. Like it seems weird that like Anthony Edwards of all people would be like, you know, oh, you don't like Rudy? Okay, well, I'm going to go put 40 on you for Rudy's honor. Mm-hmm. But like, that's kind of what he does. Like when he gets ticked off about something, it's just, I mean, we've seen it every year. It's just kind of curtains. We're hitting like an hour though. Anything else you guys want to plug? Anything you want to talk about? How's your weekend going?
I was just going to talk about Jaden Daniels. He's playing well.
He's just injured. He was injured this year. I thought he had a great rookie season. He brought Washington back. No one was talking about the Washington Commanders. He's really skinny. I'm worried that he'll get hit and he won't last in the NFL. But
I gotta admit, though, Jaden Daniels and Jaden McDaniels have very similar body types, where they're both just skinny, tall guys.
One plays a sport where you should be skinny and tall, and one plays a sport where you shouldn't.
Yeah, and as a result, he keeps getting hurt because of that.
That's been one of my biggest pet peeves of like getting into media, right? Of like, I'm not going to know how to pronounce every player's name, but I'll probably know the starters, most like WNBA, NBA, or Gophers. Like I will know the starters. I'm not going to know who Tyler Bates was on whatever team they blew out last time when his name came up for some reason. I'm not going to know anything about him, but like I'll get his name right.
Yeah. I was just saying, I kept saying Io.
Shaq of all people to call him Jaden Daniels. Just like, oof. Okay.
I mean, I'm trying to think. Io is Dosunmu. Is that how you say his last name?
Dosunmu, yeah.
Dosunmu, because I said Io for a while. I'll be honest. I just was not certain how you pronounce that.
It's Io. Yeah. It is Io, not Ao. And when he first got traded here, the amount of people in the chat that were like, "You're saying it wrong. It's A, like EHO." And then I changed it to that, and 5 minutes later was getting chats of like, "No, it's I, like your I." Oh, so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to wait until he introduces himself. I'm not going to say his name. I'm just going to say the dude from Chicago.
It can be tough. I will say this. The Wolves are in the stratosphere now, and I think they have been where they have national attention. Like I bring up Zach Lowe and Rosillo and stuff. Like Simmons, like they're discussing these guys in their monologues. It is part of, like, I think of how we always thought, and obviously Mitch, you and I were, when they were, and Andrew, you remember these teams, these very funny Wolves teams that like people here were not paying attention to outside of the diehard.
Beyond Graham.
Yeah.
Needed a jump
that
shot.
Name. I mean, I'm thinking like, was it Mo Williams had the 50-point game 51. Or whatever?
He was
51
like, or 53.
He's like, I was just throwing it at the basket. I'm like, I'm sure you were, because I've never seen this before. But I think, like, listen, with the Anthony Edwards star power, you can be on Get Up, and the ESPN shows the wonky people are going to be breaking down your games. Like, you have to pay attention to this team from a national standpoint, and you have to pay attention to Jaden McDaniels, because he's not just this kind of defensive. I mean, Simmons was making fun of it in the Gobert trade, where he's like, wait, why did they hold on to, McDaniels? And people here said, well, he's young, and like, look at how he defends, and he has some upside as a scorer. I mean, he frustrated fans at Washington at the college, because they were like, man, this guy was supposed to be super good, and he just had a whole bunch of fouls and like just lost his mind, right? Like, so I just think McDaniels is in this, like, he is Scottie Pippen to Ant, right? I'm not saying he's the exact same player, but like, you need to know who Ant's Scottie Pippen is. And I think this is the best thing about this team locally, is that people love, like, I always say a team is doing something right when people have different jerseys, right? Because there's Nas people. I mean, they were Dillingham people, right? But like, there were Nas people. They obviously Ant would sell the most jerseys. There's McDaniels people. There were people who had Nah, right? There's
Bones jerseys. Every game I go to, there's a handful of Bones, and it's not just the Crunch Wears No Pants guys wearing Bones jerseys. Like,
which I would say
unironic Bones Highland fans.
Please wear pants with your Bones jersey. But like, I think the point I'm making here is, like, people fall in love with this team collectively, even with one ascendant superstar, right? The guy who will stay here the longest. But I think nationally, people have to. Obviously, the shows will lead with Edwards and how he plays and stuff like this, but they do need to know who Jaden McDaniels is. Like, at this point, we're beyond just he's a niche player that like people here like. I've always loved him. I've always thought he's hilarious. He is truly like the sidekick to Edwards' favorite player, and an important part of a team that right now is the 4 seed and could kind of force things, if they play well down the stretch.
All right, guys, I'm calling it. We're gonna hit an hour. For anyone that jumped into this late, which for Pete's sake, 18 people watching still on YouTube. That's dedication. If you hopped in late, this does get published over on YouTube and X as soon as I hit end stream. It will be a podcast released tomorrow morning, Monday the 2nd at 7 a.m. For Tom and Mitch, I'm Andrew. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back again on Tuesday. Hopefully another win. It'd be fun to get some good vibes going into the playoffs.
For sure.